Welcome back to Conservative Conversations. I'm your host, Reid.
And I'm Frank.
Today we're going to be talking about California increasing the minimum wage for fast food workers, the terror attack in Russia, and more. So let's get started. Before we get started, listeners, I want to remind you to follow us on your favorite podcast platform, leave a rating and review, and also you can subscribe on our YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate it. And to get started, I'm going to talk about an increase to the fast food minimum wage in California that takes place on April 1st, today as we are recording. And it applies to most national fast food chains that are limited service, that have at least 60 locations across the country. And this includes the national brand themselves and franchises. And it jumps to $20 an hour. I think it was $16 an hour previously. And there are some exceptions, like fast food restaurants that are inside like grocery stores that primarily, where I think at least half of their revenue has to be like household type of grocery items and other things, like a regular grocery store. And there, I think, are exceptions to like fast food restaurants in airports and sporting venues and things like that. And some establishments where they make bread and the bread is offered as a standalone menu item, not related to like just making a sandwich or a burger or something like that.
Right.
But of course, a lot of people are pleased to get an extra $4 an hour in their paycheck. That's sort of the proponents' view that these are often low-paying jobs in the fast food industry. And they need to be paid more. And then there are opponents that say that the increase can harm prices for the consumer and even the worker, because oftentimes, the same people that work at these type of jobs consume the type of food they're making, whether it's at the establishment they work for or other fast food places.
Right.
And it can also affect the people that the restaurants hire and employ and stuff like that. You're more likely to hire somebody who's more experienced to pay them $20 an hour than somebody who's not. That's one story I want to talk about, because I think it's definitely is going to have a big impact, especially in California, where prices are already so expensive, and this is just going to, add on to that, plus the cost of inflation, because inflation, the rate of increase has gone down, but prices haven't come down any, and this is just going to add to it. Some restaurant owners and franchisees have already come out and said they will be raising prices at their establishments to help make up for it. And I think stuff like this is just going to add to, because we sort of talked briefly before in some past episodes about how a lot of people are leaving California because of partly the economic situation and other things going on. And this is going to compound onto it.
It seems like to me that it could compound onto a lot of things, because they're also saying, they've also talked for a while about automation and how the machines are supposed to take over certain jobs and positions.
Yeah.
And it seems like, if it's going to cost $20 an hour now per person, I've already seen certain places. There's people right here. There's restaurants right here where we live where they have robots who do little simple tasks already, like run drinks, for instance.
Right.
So, you could see a shortening of staff or no staffing or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these closed, especially if they were franchise ships.
Right. Well, one of the, like, especially with the stipulation that they have to have 60 restaurants nationwide or more
Right.
for them to apply. Well, what if there's a business that's like right on the line? They have like 65 restaurants nationwide. Well, it'd almost be an incentive for them to close down the 6 restaurants to get down to 59 to be under that limit and not have to pay the extra price.
And why wouldn't you want to close the ones there?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's going to help add to the troubles of the local economy.
Right. You're putting the local people out of a job.
Exactly, by pricing the wages so high.
Right. Well, so I think it's just going to have further compounding effects because, usually, as a person who believes in the free market, the market will usually dictate the wage prices for somebody.
Right.
And, artificially increasing them by the government, making you have to pay somebody more, is not going to end up working out well for most people.
Well, and already 16 is more than double the federal minimum, so that's not a horrible wage. I mean, there's people who live in rural places who live off of minimum wage, so...
Yeah.
I mean, I get that California is way more expensive, especially in certain areas, but you're talking double what people in other places have to live off of. So, I don't know. It's just interesting. It'll be interesting to see all the ramifications from that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because somebody who gets paid $20 an hour to work at the register, I hadn't seen yet if there's any stipulations to your position. If there's an increase, like, based on what position of a job you have. But assuming it's the same across the board, not mattering the position, how much are you going to have to pay the manager now? You got to increase their wages. Because what if they were the ones getting paid $20 an hour before this increase? And now you got the person at the cash register getting paid the same as the manager of the store?
Right.
I mean...
Well, that's why it's going to have the effect on pricing, too, like you said, for the consumer. I mean, the burgers are going to have to go up to pay for everybody's wages, too.
Right.
And, I mean, it's easy to see what's going to happen. It's just, how big of a scale it's going to be
exactly. Yes, I think that's kind of an interesting thing to watch, because, depending on where you live, it could be coming to, a burger joint near you.
Yeah. Well, are you ready to move on?
Yep, that's pretty much all I had on that.
Well, the next thing I was going to talk about, and it's kind of interesting that you say that, I think you'll see for at least a couple of the things that I want to talk about today that that whole it may be coming to you is something that we've talked about before. And I saw today in prepping for this, I was looking in a little bit to that shooting incident that happened over in Russia. And, because I thought it was interesting, I saw a couple days ago about how Russia had been even warned about this attack. Now, I don't remember if it was us who warned them or some other place like Pakistan or somebody, but it was an ISIS attack, and somebody had intel that ISIS was going to do this. And reached out to Russia, but still, I guess they didn't take it seriously or not serious enough, perhaps.
Right.
But, yeah, this attack happened at a concert, and I guess it was something like at least 60 people are said to be dead because of it. And I saw today that they have 11 people in custody. And there was a piece that came out about how it was obvious they were beaten while they were in police custody or in jail custody or whatever, but they had these big welts all over their faces and stuff.
One of the stories I've heard is they cut the dude's ear off and made him eat it.
Well, I think I saw that too.
Yeah.
But that was a couple days back.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just was kind of looking into that, and I saw this headline that stopped me in my tracks about how there's this retired general from the United States Army, retired general, who's saying that, ISIS is fomenting their hatred so much, and it's not just, it's really like the whole Western culture and
Right.
America too. And if he's basically saying that they're stepping up their game, and this Russian attack is like part of it, and that it's just a matter of time before we see some kind of domestic event happen here as well. So I mean that just is kind of scary, and obviously it wasn't like the biggest terror attack in history or anything like that, but it is just scary to think that they're stepping up their game, and under this presidency, that's been so weak, that it does just concern you.
Right.
I can't imagine if such a thing were to happen here. I don't think we're
Right.
ready for it.
No. I mean, we've heard multiple times about the reports of suspected terrorists coming through the southern border.
Yep.
So it almost seems like it could be, one of those matter of time situations.
Well, then it's interesting, not to force it in or anything,
Sure.
but this bridge collapse that happened in Brooklyn or wherever it was it Brooklyn?
Baltimore.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. It is here in my notes. The Baltimore Bridge collapse. Excuse me. But they say that our infrastructure, is basically just at critical all over the country. Like there's tons of bridges that, are basically in the red when they're checked up on. So, not to tie that in, but just to say that it could be very easy. They say that our like electric grid and stuff like that. If you remember the incident that happened in Texas where they went for so long without power, it does kind of seem like we would be very prone to certain kinds of attacks, and that somebody could cause a lot of damage by just attacking the right place.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, one thing I saw talk about Russia a little bit ago is there's a news story. I hadn't planned to talk about it, but I'll try to find a link. But there were Russian, I guess their navy. I don't know if they have I assume it's their navy, but Russian ships sailing through the Red Sea, where all these attacks have been on shipping vessels coming through through there.
That's something we've definitely talked about
Right.
before, yeah.
And it almost seems like they're doing it just to show off. Like they can cruise right on through there without having to worry about their ships being attacked, because Russia and Iran are partners,
Right.
and Iran helps support like the Houthis and all these other different terrorist groups in the area. So it's kind of like a big smack in the face again to the current administration, how they've been handling things
Well, right.
across the world.
Well, and you just made me think of like one or two other things that I saw. I'll have to grab a link too. But I forgot to put in my notes and tie into this. But they also just recently pulled out of a treaty or agreement that we had that said that they wouldn't test certain types of nuclear arms. And they totally pulled out of that. And I saw that they have this new bomb that they want to test, I suppose. And related to that, I saw something somewhere else that said they were supporting North Korea or something in a bid to get the nuke, or maybe they have it and they want to test or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but not only have they pulled out of the pact that they were in with us about testing, but they're supporting like one of these rogue nation states to either test or possess as well. So that's just, you talk about a slap in the face. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they're making some big, bold moves, it almost seems like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it seems like they can get away with it, because why else would they?
Yeah, who's going to stop them?
Right. It doesn't seem like this administration is going to. It'd be nice if they would. But it's, given the track record so far, I might give them a little slap on the wrist or something like that, but nothing consequential.
Right, and something consequential is going to come. I mean, it's just a matter of time, I think.
Right, exactly. Is that all you got on that one?
Yeah, that's really all I had. I mean, otherwise I'd pray for the people who died and their families and all of that. It was terrible. It's terrible to see terror like that anywhere, but...
Right. Yep. Well, then the next story I got, a little bit of an older story. I think it came out shortly after we last recorded, but there's a big news story going around about this woman in New York whose house was being squatted, and the viral clip is of her being the one arrested, because the laws in New York, the way they work, at least in New York City, I think, is that if somebody makes a home in your house, I'm being very general here.
Yep.
For 30 days, they end up having a right to stay there, and it becomes a civil matter that the property owner has to go to a civil court about to get the squatter removed from the home. And, for most people, that's kind of what the story is. Like, how is that right? Because this woman owns the home, she's a homeowner, and even if she's not there, somebody's immediately breaking the law by coming into her home, unless she had given them permission to come in, which in this case it doesn't seem like that's true. And all this the people have to do is wait 30 days, and then they're not criminals anymore, and they have to go to a civil court, which can take weeks and months to get the situation resolved. Meanwhile, they get to stay in this woman's home that they're not even supposed to be in. So that kind of became a big story.
Well, I can tell you, because I've seen a little bit of this too, but there's also the case where they can come in and just present false documents.
Yeah,
where they say that they have, an electric bill there.
Right.
And it might not even be the electric bill. But if they show something with their name and that address on it. Or here's one. I heard of one that's as simple as they could pay a handyman company to come and repaint the front door. And just show the bill.
Right, that they've been working on the property.
Yeah. And boom, they don't even have to reside there for 30 days.
Right. Yeah, so, and apparently there are squatter rights laws in pretty much all 50 states, which is kind of bonkers. So if you're a homeowner, I look up what your local and state laws are on squatters, because you never know when you might find somebody in your home these days that's not supposed to be there. Because another part of this story is that there is a viral TikTok clip of this Venezuelan basically telling people how to come into homes in America and take them over. And then they'll end up being protected by the laws to be able to stay there.
Well, and one of the things that I've found interesting from looking into this is it seems like it's more of like part of it's like a squatter's rights thing. But another part of it is like a tenant's right issue.
Right.
Because that's where the element comes in, where they're presenting these false documents and trying to make it look like they're tenants of the property.
Right.
Because then that's where it becomes the civil matter that they're talking about, because they have to go through a proper eviction process and everything like that if it's a true tenant. So
sure.
I think that's interesting too, because it makes me think, well, we don't have as much to worry because we're just tenants here where we reside. So if it really came down to it, it'd be tenant versus tenant, and then the true owner of the property would help. They would be able to help in that situation and say, well, we're the true tenant, not these squatters. You know, they'd be able to show the contract, and it would have more backing,
Yeah.
and it would be easier to do it in court.
Right.
And I saw something like that, a real case where a woman had rented out her house to her son, but she also lived there with him or whatever. They had some kind of an arrangement, like.
Sure.
And so when their property got squatted on, the son was actually able to take it to court because he was the tenant, the true tenant of the mother's owned home.
Right.
So I think that's an interesting element too,
Yeah.
that you might easily be able to just, put a family member that you reside with as the tenant of your owned home. Then if you ever needed it, well, they're the true tenant,
Right.
So I don't know. I'm not a lawyer or anything,
Sure.
but I definitely found that part of it to be very intriguing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you would think that they wouldn't have any rights at all because they're trespassing, they're breaking in,
Committing fraud.
right? Yeah, fraud. They're taking your stuff, using your stuff without your permission, and you'd think immediately as they broke those laws, they wouldn't have any other kind of rights them other than what the Constitution would afford them.
This is interesting because I heard somebody make the analogy. I don't remember who, but they said it comes down to intent. That's what they're arguing, and that's what the law looks at. So if somebody breaks your window and they're coming in, like with the intent to steal or the intent to hurt you or murder you, that can be shown, and you can have the right to defend yourself and all that. But if people come in by, I don't know, just finding your door unlocked one day on accident and walking in while you're not there, and their intent is to steal the home itself non-violently, then it's a civil matter.
Yeah, well, apparently in New York City.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just interesting.
Right.
It's crazy. And
it is kind of a crazy story, and
well, in states, I was just going to to out there that states like Florida, like Governor.
Yep, that's what I was about to say. They're
okay.
already.
Well, I didn't mean to be.
Well, I didn't have anything really specific about what he's doing. I was just going to say what you're saying. There are states already trying to do something about it.
Yeah, because he has. I think they just passed some kind of legislation that's supposed to help strengthen homeowner rights.
Right.
So if they're in one of these squatter type situations, it's not as hard to get them out.
Right. Yep. So hopefully we see more of that, because it seems like some of these laws have gone unnoticed by the people that they affect the most, like the homeowners and the property owners.
Right. The taxpayers.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
That's crazy.
But that's all I got on that.
Well, that kind of, has a lot of the same elements of what I was going to talk about, and something else that we've talked about before, and, something that's been talked about a lot recently is the migrant issue, and sort of about their temporary housing and how they sort of seem to keep migrating from place to place because these sanctuary places are like running out of resources and stuff. And the most recent one that I saw is about Denver. There was a Denver official who came out, and he's basically like begging the most recent migrants, because they keep getting them. They keep coming.
Right.
And he's begging the most recent ones that have just popped up and saying, please, the city will pay for a bus. You go to Chicago, go to New York, go to some places where they have more resources for you, more resources available, even if they're not long term. Apparently Denver will only let individuals stay like for 2 weeks in their temporary housing.
Right.
But some places in New York, it's like an automatic 6 weeks for, your first go around. And then, you have to go back through but it still is like 4 more weeks than what Denver can offer people. So he's just saying, they have more resources. You get more. They offer more to you. So go to these places. And he said literally that, hang on. Let me find the quote here. Okay. Yeah, he said that the problem is that the city received too many migrants. Almost like they didn't mind some, but they got too many.
Right.
They bit off more than they could chew, and they ran out of resources. And I just find that interesting because we were just talking about New York. I don't remember if it was in the very last.
Yeah, I believe it was our last
Okay,
episode.
I think in the last recording, but even the bigger cities that he's trying to turn them to,
Yeah, they're saying it's too much.
yeah, they're hitting a wall
Yeah.
and having trouble coughing up resources for
Right.
these people. So it's just like I said, it's just like keep them on the move, keep them moving, this town to
Right.
this town. And
Well, when the biggest city in the country is saying this is too much, what does anybody expect from any other town and city in between at this point?
when it also goes back further than the last episode that we just recorded, but sort of like how we ended the first segment or about the wage increase,
Right.
but you never know if it's coming to a city near you,
Right.
and we've seen the effects. So imagine what it's going to do to your local economy, your local population, your local
Right.
taxes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the episode number picked out, but I remember one time you talked about how you kind of I think you gave like a little list of cities with populations of 1 million.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and there's been millions and millions of the migrants coming across.
Absolutely.
So many cities times over, and we're eventually going to get to the point where nobody's going to be able to hold their capacity.
Yeah, and some of those names, as I recall, were like decent names, like that you'd think would have a bigger population. But when
Right.
you see the numbers, you're like, wow, to think that someplace like Oklahoma City, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I
Right.
don't remember.
Well, Columbus, Ohio is just shy of 1 million. We're like right between 900,000 and 1 million.
Yeah, so imagine that Columbus, just instant, overnight, double population. I mean, that would be crazy.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Abbott has said that they've bussed over 100,000.
Wow.
He seems, I guess, according to the reporting that's linked, he's pretty proud of that, the fact that they've bussed over 100,000. But the most interesting thing I thought, at least out of this Denver case, is the guy even asked him. He's like, how many of you would want to move? And I guess nobody even budged, basically. And he's like, do you guys really want to stay? Or how many of you want to stay? And they all, I guess whoever spoke up said, all of us. So it's like they've moved enough. They don't want to move anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they just came all the way from who knows where, south of the border for probably several days trips. I'm sure they don't want to keep moving around.
Well,
They'd like to start making a home.
These sanctuary cities have asked for it.
Yeah.
So to now see them almost act like that not politically correct phrase, to be Indian givers and just say, oh, you've got to go somewhere else now. You can't stay here. Please don't stay here.
Right.
He literally was quoted as saying they will suffer even more if they stay in Denver rather than picking up and going somewhere else. So I don't know.
It's definitely, I don't know what word I'm looking for.
It's a big problem.
Yeah, it's a problem, and it's almost unfathomable what's going to really end up happening, because it's hard to tell.
Well, you know what? And I wasn't prepared for this, but
Sure.
I just think of how it has been asked for. They've been asking for it. The president, there's that clip of him saying they should surge the border.
Right. Yep.
And then look at there was that other story where in one day there was literally like a crowd of like 2,000 people or whatever it was.
Oh
that
yeah, just
stormed them.
recently, yeah.
Yeah, that just happened. And they like broke down the barbed wire and
Right.
broke down the fencing.
Right.
They're literally like storming the border.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Joe Biden asked for in that
Right.
soundbite. So I don't know. It's sad to see these things actually happening.
Right. I mean, some of the language that the Republicans use regarding this is an invasion, And just probably playing that clip of all those people storming the border looks like an invasion.
Absolutely.
So it's it's becoming a reality for both sides. It looks like an invasion to the Republicans, and the Democrats are getting what they wanted out of the migrants coming here.
Well, I think it's just obvious to see that it is an invasion, you know? We ought to just be able to call it for what it is. And when you link that with the other thing, like we kind of tangentially did, you never know when one of these is going to be the one who starts the domino effect.
Right.
Somebody's going to do something crazy.
Yep, definitely. Well, is that all you got on the migrant and immigration story?
That's all I got on that one.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not going to go away, and we'll be talking about it again.
Yeah.
And listeners, if you enjoyed this great conservative conversation, we hope you follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. Just search for Conservative Conversations. You can also subscribe on our YouTube channel. You can search Conservative Conversations 92, and we should come up. And we appreciate any kind of rating, review, and comments.
We also hope you might share us with a friend or interact with us here by giving us a heart or a thumbs up wherever you're listening to this. And as always, we thank you for listening.